Remote work has left 30% of people reporting increased sadness and 27% experiencing heightened loneliness, according to recent Gallup research. But Peterson identified something deeper. We're not just struggling with technology, we're struggling with being authentic in a world that rewards performance. There's a simple exercise that reveals exactly where you're lying to yourself about who you've become. It takes 5 minutes and follows Peterson's original method of honest self-reflection. This exercise will show you the gap between who you are online and who you actually are. The gap is where your anxiety lives, and it's wider than you think. The digital mask we all wear. You're scrolling through Instagram at 2 a.m. again, flicking past vacation photos and career announcements. Everyone looks so put together while you glance around your own messy room. But here's what you don't see. They're probably doing the exact same thing you are right now, comparing their reality to everyone else's carefully curated performance. Remote workers report 46% stress levels and 27% experience loneliness, according to Gallup research, yet we keep performing online as if everything is perfect. Social media has given us the most sophisticated persona-building tools in human history. We have filters that reshape our faces, AI that can generate entire backgrounds, and editing apps that can transform a mundane Tuesday into something that looks like a lifestyle magazine cover. We've become professional actors in our own lives, spending hours crafting versions of ourselves that we sometimes start to believe are real. Peterson talked about the dangers of over-identifying with your persona, that mask you wear in social situations, but he was writing about business meetings and dinner parties. Now we carry our personas in our pockets. We update them constantly. We get real-time feedback in the form of likes and comments that tell us which version of ourselves the world prefers. The psychological cost of maintaining these digital facades is staggering. You're not just managing one identity anymore, you're managing multiple versions of yourself across different platforms, each one slightly different, each one requiring constant maintenance. Think about your Instagram self versus your LinkedIn self versus your dating app self. Jung understood that over-reliance on personas leads to inauthenticity, and now we're maintaining several simultaneously. The Instagram version might be more artistic and spontaneous. The LinkedIn version is professional and accomplished. The dating app version is attractive and interesting, but not too intimidating. You've become a brand manager for multiple versions of yourself, and the job is exhausting. Dating apps have turned relationships into performance art. You have 6 photos and a few hundred characters to convince someone you're worth meeting. Authenticity becomes a liability because authentic moments are often messy, unflattering, or complicated. So you present the most attractive, most interesting, most accomplished version of yourself. Everyone else is doing the same thing. The result is a marketplace full of highlight reels trying to connect with other highlight reels. Here's the paradox that defines our moment. We have more ways to connect than ever, yet report feeling more isolated and misunderstood than previous generations. We have thousands of followers but struggle to find people who actually know us. We broadcast our lives constantly but feel like no one sees who we really are. The tools designed to bring us together have created new forms of loneliness. When everyone is performing, genuine connection becomes almost impossible. The humor in our situation is dark but undeniable. We're literally paying for apps to help us pretend to be ourselves. Facetune costs money. Premium dating app features cost money. Social media advertising to promote our posts costs money. We're investing real resources into creating fake versions of ourselves, then wondering why we feel disconnected from our own lives. It's like hiring an actor to play you in your own movie, then getting confused about which one of you is real. The editing doesn't stop at photos. AI can now generate entire social media posts that sound like they could have been written by you. Dating app algorithms suggest conversation starters based on the other person's profile. Even our words are becoming curated performances rather than authentic expressions. We're outsourcing our personalities to algorithms that promise to make us more likable, more successful, more attractive. But what happens to the actual person underneath all that optimization? This constant curation creates a feedback loop of self-deception. You post a photo from a great day and get positive responses. Your brain starts to believe that version of your life is normal rather than exceptional. You begin to expect your real life to match your social media life. When it doesn't, when you're tired or struggling or just having an ordinary day, you feel like you're failing at being yourself. The gap between your online self and your actual experience becomes a source of constant anxiety. The pressure to maintain these digital personas affects how you make real decisions. You choose restaurants because they're Instagram-worthy rather than because you actually want to eat there. You go to events because they'll make good content rather than because you're genuinely interested. You start living your actual life as if it's a photo shoot for your online life. The performance begins to shape the reality it was supposed to represent. Peterson understood that developing too strong an attachment to your persona could prevent you from growing as a person. In the digital age, this problem has multiplied exponentially. You're not just attached to one social mask, you're maintaining several, each one requiring constant updates, each one pulling you further away from whoever you actually are underneath all the curation. The most insidious part is how normal this has become. Everyone is doing it, so it feels necessary rather than optional. Not having social media feels like social suicide. Not optimizing your dating profile feels like romantic suicide. Not presenting the best version of yourself online feels like professional suicide. The pressure to perform digitally has become so intense that authenticity feels risky rather than liberating. But here's what Peterson would recognize immediately. The gap between your online self and your real self is where your anxiety lives. That feeling of emptiness after scrolling through social media isn't random. It's your psyche rebelling against the constant performance. The exhaustion you feel from maintaining your digital presence isn't laziness. It's your authentic self trying to tell you something important. Every moment you spend crafting a false image of your life is a moment you're not spending actually living your life. Every hour you invest in managing your online persona is an hour you're not investing in becoming the person that persona pretends to be. The energy you pour into digital performance is energy stolen from actual growth, actual relationships, actual experiences that might genuinely transform you. The real problem isn't just the masks we wear online. It's that we've become so addicted to the feedback loop of digital validation that we can't sit still long enough to figure out who we actually are underneath all the performance. The notification prison. Your phone buzzes, you look. A notification pops up, you respond. This cycle repeats from the moment you wake up until you fall asleep with the device still in your hand. Constant notifications have destroyed our ability to sit quietly with ourselves. Peterson's most famous exercise was simple. Sit on your bed one night and ask yourself what you're doing wrong. Just sit there and think. But try doing that exercise today. Most people can't make it 5 minutes without reaching for their phone. The silence feels uncomfortable. The absence of external stimulation creates anxiety rather than clarity. Your brain has been trained to expect constant input, constant distraction, constant external validation of its existence. This constant connectivity creates what researchers call the affecturistic. Our emotional responses become clouded by the immediate stimulation of notifications, making it nearly impossible to access genuine self-awareness. Remote workers report the highest emotional distress, with 45% experiencing stress and 27% reporting loneliness, according to Fortune research. Yet we keep checking our devices compulsively, seeking connection through the very technology that isolates us. The irony cuts deep. We have infinite information at our fingertips, yet know ourselves less than any generation in history. You can access any fact, any book, any piece of human knowledge within seconds. You can connect with people across the globe instantly. You can learn new skills, explore new ideas, and expand your understanding of the world without leaving your couch. But when was the last time you spent an hour just thinking about your own life without any digital input? When did you last sit with a difficult emotion without immediately reaching for your phone to escape it? Every ping, buzz, and notification pulls you away from self-reflection. Your phone becomes a getaway car for your consciousness. Feeling uncomfortable, check Instagram. Anxious about a decision, scroll through TikTok. Facing a difficult truth about yourself. There's an app for avoiding that too. The notifications aren't random. They're engineered to capture your attention at precisely the moments when you might otherwise turn inward and examine your own thoughts and feelings. Notifications have become our new form of external validation, replacing any internal compass we might have developed. Each buzz brings a tiny hit of dopamine, a small confirmation that someone somewhere wants your attention. Your self-worth begins to correlate with the frequency of interruptions. A quiet phone feels like social rejection. No new messages suggests no one cares. The algorithm learns your weaknesses and feeds them back to you in perfectly timed doses, designed to keep you checking, scrolling, and responding. Think about what happens when you're forced to be alone with your thoughts. Your phone dies, or you forget it at home, or you're somewhere without service. The initial panic gives way to something more unsettling. You realize how much of your mental space has been outsourced to digital stimulation. Without constant input, your mind doesn't know what to do with itself. The thoughts that surface might be uncomfortable, challenging, or require actual work to process. It's easier to reach for the phone and let someone else's content fill that space. The pressure to constantly evaluate your social media updates adds stress to daily life. Each time you post something, you worry about the response it will generate. Will people like it? Will they comment? Will they share it? This obsession creates another opportunity for comparison and potential embarrassment, especially if someone else's content gets more attention and positive feedback. You start measuring your worth by metrics that have nothing to do with who you actually are or what you're trying to accomplish in life. Your relationship with notifications shapes how you relate to your own thoughts and emotions. Instead of sitting with difficult feelings and working through them, you've trained yourself to immediately seek external distraction. Sadness gets interrupted by funny videos. Anxiety gets numbed by scrolling. Boredom gets eliminated by endless content consumption. You never learn to tolerate discomfort, never develop the capacity to sit with challenging emotions long enough to understand what they're trying to tell you. The notification economy has turned your attention into a commodity that gets bought and sold by companies whose business model depends on keeping you distracted. Every app, every platform, every service is competing for your mental bandwidth. They hire psychologists and neuroscientists to design more effective ways to capture and hold your attention. Your ability to focus, to reflect, to think deeply about your own life has become the product being sold to advertisers. Peterson understood that self-awareness requires periods of genuine solitude and reflection. You need time to process your experiences, to examine your motivations, to confront uncomfortable truths about your behavior and choices. But solitude has become almost impossible to achieve. Even when you're physically alone, you're connected to thousands of other people through your device. Their thoughts, opinions, and constant updates fill the mental space where your own insights might otherwise emerge. The fear of missing out drives much of this behavior. What if something important happens while your phone is off? What if someone tries to reach you and you don't respond immediately? What if there's news, gossip, or social drama that you're not aware of? This anxiety keeps you tethered to your device, even when you know the constant connectivity is harming your mental health and preventing genuine self-reflection. Consider the last time you had an original thought that wasn't influenced by something you saw on social media, read in an article, or heard in a podcast. Most people struggle to identify such moments because their thinking has become reactive rather than generative. You respond to other people's ideas rather than developing your own. You consume other people's insights rather than doing the hard work of generating personal wisdom through experience and reflection. The addiction operates on multiple levels. There's the obvious dopamine hit from likes and comments, but there's also the deeper addiction to avoiding discomfort. Notifications provide an escape route from any challenging internal experience. They offer a socially acceptable way to avoid dealing with your own thoughts and feelings. Everyone else is doing it, so it doesn't feel like avoidance. It feels like normal social behavior. Digital detox periods become essential for anyone serious about self-awareness. Not permanent disconnection, but regular intervals where you create space for your own thoughts to emerge without external interference. These breaks feel uncomfortable at first because you've lost the tolerance for mental stillness. But it's in those moments of digital silence that you can hear your own voice again, separate from the constant chorus of other people's opinions and distractions. The first step to finding your true self is creating sacred spaces free from digital interference. Spaces where notifications can't reach you, where algorithms can't influence your thinking, where you're forced to confront whatever thoughts and feelings arise naturally. These moments of genuine solitude become the foundation for authentic self-knowledge. But even as you work to reclaim your attention from the notification prison, a deeper anxiety emerges about what it means to be human in an age where machines seem increasingly capable of replacing us entirely. AI anxiety and the fear of being replaced. If AI can do my job, what's my unique value? This question haunts millions of workers in 2025, creating what researchers formally define as AI anxiety, the fear and trepidation associated with AI's potential impact on various aspects of life, including job security and personal privacy. You wake up to headlines about AI writing novels, diagnosing diseases, and creating art that sells for thousands of dollars. Then you sit down at your computer to do work that feels increasingly automatable. The fear isn't just about losing income, it's about losing purpose, relevance, and proof that your existence matters in a world where machines can replicate human intelligence with increasing sophistication. This anxiety strikes at people across all age groups, manifesting as an existential crisis that challenges the core of human identity. Young people who grew up expecting to build their identities around their work now face the possibility that their chosen professions might become obsolete before they're fully established. These aren't abstract worries about the distant future, they're immediate concerns about career paths that might disappear within years rather than decades. Peterson taught that meaning comes through taking on responsibility and developing competence in areas that matter. But what happens when the areas where you've developed competence become the exact areas where AI excels? The lawyer whose research can be done by algorithms, the writer whose articles can be generated by language models, the analyst whose insights can be produced by data processing systems. The foundation of Peterson's philosophy, that you find purpose through becoming good at something important, suddenly feels shaky when machines can become good at those same things faster and cheaper. The humor in our situation borders on the absurd. We worry about robots taking over while we voluntarily hand our decision-making to algorithms every day. Netflix tells you what to watch, Spotify curates your music, GPS determines your route, dating apps choose your potential partners, Amazon suggests your purchases. You've already outsourced most of your daily choices to AI systems, yet you panic about AI taking control of your life. You're like someone who's been letting a robot drive their car for years, suddenly becoming terrified that robots might learn to drive. Recommendation engines have transformed us into passive consumers of our own lives. Instead of actively choosing what to read, watch, listen to, or buy, you respond to suggestions generated by algorithms that know your preferences better than you do. These systems don't just predict what you want, they shape what you want by limiting your exposure to options outside their calculated parameters. Your tastes, interests, and even your sense of identity become partially algorithmic creations rather than authentic personal developments. The deeper fear cuts to the heart of human existence. If machines can replicate human intelligence, what makes us human? This question terrifies people because it challenges the fundamental assumption that consciousness, creativity, and emotional intelligence are uniquely human traits. When AI creates poetry that moves people to tears, writes code that solves complex problems, and generates insights that advance scientific knowledge, the boundaries between human and artificial intelligence blur in ways that feel threatening to our species-level identity. However, McKinsey research reveals that only 1% of companies call their AI deployments mature, illustrating a significant gap between the hype surrounding AI capabilities and the reality of current implementation. While approximately 50% of companies utilize AI in at least one business area, the actual impact on worker well-being shows no significant negative effects from AI exposure, according to workforce studies. The fear often exceeds the immediate reality. This anxiety manifests in frantic attempts at self-optimization that mirror the very systems we fear will replace us. People obsess over productivity hacking, skill stacking, and constant learning as if they can somehow outcompete machines at being machine-like. They track their habits, optimize their routines, and measure their performance with the same metrics used to evaluate AI systems. The irony is profound. In trying to stay relevant in an AI world, many people are becoming more algorithmic in their thinking and behavior. The skill-updating treadmill never stops. Every few months brings news of AI achieving new capabilities, which triggers another round of career pivoting and skill acquisition. You learn Python, then discover AI can code better than you. You develop expertise in data analysis, then find AI can process datasets faster and more accurately. You pivot to creative work, only to watch AI generate art, music, and stories. The constant adaptation becomes exhausting, a never-ending race against systems that improve exponentially while human learning follows linear patterns. The question that keeps people awake at night isn't really about competing with machines, it's about remembering what makes us irreplaceably human. Are we trying to become better versions of what AI already does well? Or are we trying to reconnect with aspects of humanity that no algorithm can replicate? The answer determines whether AI anxiety becomes a destructive force that drives people toward machine-like behavior or a constructive force that calls them back to authentic human qualities. Peterson understood that human value doesn't come from what you can do, it comes from how you choose to be. Your capacity for moral choice, your ability to take responsibility for others, your willingness to suffer for principles you believe in, your capability for genuine love and sacrifice, these qualities can't be programmed or optimized. They emerge from the messy, inefficient, gloriously human process of living through difficulty and choosing meaning over comfort. Consider what AI cannot replicate. The decision to tell a difficult truth when lying would be easier, the choice to help someone when there's no personal benefit, the willingness to persist through failure when quitting would be rational, the capacity to forgive someone who doesn't deserve it. These fundamentally human qualities don't require advanced degrees or technical skills. They require character, which develops through moral choices made over time in real relationships with real consequences. Your irreplaceable human value lies in your capacity for authentic relationship. AI can simulate conversation, but it cannot genuinely care about your well-being. It can process your problems, but it cannot truly understand your suffering. It can offer solutions, but it cannot share the burden of implementation. The human qualities that matter most, empathy, loyalty, courage, integrity, exist in the context of relationships where your choices affect other people who matter to you. AI anxiety is actually a call to rediscover your authentic human qualities that no algorithm can replicate. Instead of trying to compete with machines at mechanical tasks, you can focus on developing the moral courage, relational skills, and character traits that define human flourishing. The fear of replacement becomes an invitation to remember what makes you irreplaceably human, not your productivity metrics, but your capacity to choose meaning, create authentic connections, and take responsibility for making the world better through your presence in it. Yet even as we recognize these irreplaceable human qualities, many of us respond to AI anxiety by doubling down on the very mechanistic thinking we fear machines will replace. We turn to systems, apps, and optimization strategies to somehow engineer our way out of existential uncertainty. The optimization trap. This drive towards systematic control has created what researchers call the optimization trap. The self-improvement industry has exploded into a multi-billion-dollar ecosystem where personal growth gets transformed into performance metrics. Your phone contains applications designed to make you more efficient, focused, and successful through data collection and algorithmic feedback. The promise is simple: track enough metrics and follow enough protocols, and you can hack your way to an optimized life. Personal growth has been transformed into a performance metric. You don't just read books anymore, you track pages per day and measure reading speed. You don't just exercise, you monitor heart rate zones and analyze recovery data. You don't just sleep, you track REM cycles and optimize your bedroom environment based on detailed reports. Every human activity becomes quantifiable data that can be improved through systematic intervention. Peterson understood that struggle is necessary for growth. Real development happens when you confront difficult situations and work through them without clear instructions or guaranteed outcomes. But optimization culture has created an entire industry dedicated to eliminating struggle through life hacks, productivity systems, and efficiency techniques. Why face the messy process of figuring out your priorities when you can download an app that categorizes your tasks using scientifically proven methods? The humor in trying to optimize the human experience like it's a software program becomes apparent when you examine the absurdity. People spend hours each day logging data about their habits, then spend more time analyzing that data to identify areas for improvement, then spend even more time researching new optimization strategies. The process of optimization becomes more time-consuming than the activities being optimized. You end up spending more energy managing your productivity system than actually being productive. Genuine self-development has been replaced with data tracking and habit stacking. Instead of developing authentic relationships, you track social interactions and set networking goals. Instead of exploring creative interests, you measure creative output and establish systems for consistent content generation. Instead of learning to tolerate discomfort, you create detailed protocols for managing every aspect of your emotional and physical experience. The tracking becomes the goal rather than the growth it was supposed to measure. McKinsey research reveals that while AI can improve workplace performance, it often increases stress levels among employees who feel pressure to match algorithmic efficiency. This creates a paradox where tools designed to help us become more effective actually make us more anxious about our performance. The constant measurement creates pressure to perform rather than space to grow. Every day becomes a test of whether you're meeting your metrics, rather than an opportunity to experience life directly. Optimization culture has made people afraid of inefficiency, boredom, and natural human rhythms. You panic when you have unscheduled time because it feels unproductive. You feel guilty when you're not working toward measurable goals because it seems wasteful. You become anxious during periods of rest because they don't generate data or progress toward optimization targets. The natural ebb and flow of human energy gets replaced with rigid systems designed to maintain consistent output regardless of internal states. Data shows that stress from remote work conditions has led to significant mental health days lost across organizations worldwide. Yet instead of addressing the root causes of this stress, many people respond by implementing more sophisticated tracking systems and optimization protocols. They try to engineer their way out of psychological distress using the same mechanistic thinking that created the problem in the first place. What gets lost when you try to eliminate all friction from your life is the development that happens specifically because of friction. Peterson recognized that meaningful growth occurs when you face challenges without clear solutions and work through them using your judgment, creativity, and persistence. The struggles that optimization culture tries to eliminate are often the exact experiences that build character, develop resilience, and create genuine confidence in your ability to handle uncertainty. Consider what happens when you encounter a problem that doesn't have an app, system, or optimization strategy to solve it. People who have become dependent on external frameworks for personal development often feel helpless when facing novel challenges that require original thinking and adaptive responses. They've trained themselves to follow protocols rather than develop judgment. They've learned to optimize existing systems rather than create new approaches when circumstances change. The self-improvement industry profits from convincing you that there's always a better system, a more efficient approach, or a more optimized way to live. This creates a perpetual cycle of system hopping where you constantly search for the perfect productivity method, the ideal habit tracking app, or the ultimate life optimization framework. You become a consumer of self-improvement products rather than someone who actually improves through direct experience and reflection. Some struggles are features, not bugs of human development. The confusion you feel when making important decisions forces you to clarify your values and priorities. The discomfort of learning new skills builds tolerance for uncertainty and persistence through difficulty. The messiness of relationships teaches you empathy, communication, and compromise. These developmental challenges can't be optimized away without losing the growth they're designed to produce. True growth happens in the unoptimized spaces where you have to figure things out for yourself. The moments when your system breaks down and you have to improvise. The situations where your data doesn't provide clear guidance and you have to trust your judgment. The experiences that don't fit into measurable categories but somehow change you in important ways. Jung understood that small micro-improvements like tidying your room can produce major psychological changes. This connects directly to Peterson's original bedtime exercise. Sit quietly and ask yourself what you're doing wrong that you could fix. The power isn't in the optimization system you use to track room cleaning habits. It's in the simple act of taking responsibility for your immediate environment and honestly confronting areas where you're avoiding necessary action. But even this simple practice gets complicated when the very spaces where we live and work have fundamentally changed how we connect with other people. Remote work and the loss of shared reality. 73% of workers are now fully remote or hybrid in 2025, fundamentally changing how humans connect with each other during the majority of their waking hours. This isn't just a shift in where people work, it's a complete transformation of how relationships form, how trust develops, and how shared experiences create the bonds that make work meaningful. For most of human history, work happened in physical proximity to other people. You knew your colleagues not just through their professional contributions, but through 1,000 small interactions that revealed their character, humor, and humanity. Zoom fatigue isn't really about video calls being technically exhausting. It's about the loss of embodied presence, the subtle cues, the energy in a room, the way people move and breathe and exist in three-dimensional space together. When you're on a video call, you're seeing a carefully framed version of someone's upper body displayed on a screen. You miss their posture, their fidgeting, the way they interact with their physical environment. You lose access to the peripheral awareness that tells you when someone is distracted, uncomfortable, or genuinely engaged. The human brain evolved to read these signals automatically, and their absence creates cognitive strain that people experience as fatigue. Peterson understood the importance of physical presence and shared struggle in forming meaningful relationships. He wrote about how people bond through facing challenges together, through being present for each other's difficulties, and through the kind of authentic interaction that happens when you can't curate your presentation. But remote work has eliminated most opportunities for shared struggle. You don't see your colleagues dealing with difficult clients, working through complex problems, or handling personal challenges that affect their work. Everyone appears competent and composed in their video call boxes, presenting only the professional aspects of their personalities. The humor in our situation is striking. We have more global connectivity than any generation in history, yet report feeling more isolated and disconnected from the people we work with every day. You can collaborate with someone in real time across continents, share screens instantly, and communicate through multiple platforms simultaneously. But you don't know if they have kids, pets, or roommates interrupting their day. You don't see them grab coffee, take phone calls, or interact with other colleagues. The richness of human personality gets compressed into scheduled video interactions and carefully crafted messages. Remote work has eliminated the casual conversations that often provided life's most meaningful moments at work. The walk to the parking garage where a colleague mentioned their divorce, the coffee break conversation about career ambitions that led to a mentorship, the lunch discussion about books that revealed shared interests, the spontaneous celebration after landing a big client. These unplanned interactions created the social fabric that made work about more than just completing tasks. Research shows that sharing meals with coworkers is linked to lower stress levels and feeling better at work, highlighting how these simple offline connections provided psychological benefits that digital interactions struggle to replicate. Building authentic relationships through screens presents unique challenges that go beyond technical limitations. Video calls create a performance pressure that doesn't exist in casual office interactions. Everyone knows they're being watched, recorded, and evaluated based on their on-camera presence. People spend time adjusting their lighting, choosing backgrounds, and managing their appearance in ways that would seem absurd in a traditional office setting. The constant awareness of being viewed through a camera lens makes natural interaction nearly impossible. Working from home has blurred the boundaries between public and private self in ways that create new forms of psychological stress. Your bedroom becomes your conference room. Your kitchen table becomes your office. Your personal space gets invaded by professional obligations, while your professional presence gets contaminated by domestic interruptions. Children wander into important meetings. Delivery drivers ring doorbells during presentations. Partners ask questions during confidential calls. The separation between who you are at work and who you are at home disappears, but not in a way that creates integration, in a way that creates confusion about which version of yourself you're supposed to present at any given moment. Can you truly know someone through their carefully curated video call presence? This question haunts many remote workers who realize they've been collaborating with colleagues for months or years without developing genuine relationships. You know their professional skills, their communication style, and their expertise in specific areas, but you don't know their sense of humor, their values under pressure, or how they handle conflict. The person you see in scheduled video meetings might be completely different from the person they are in unstructured social situations or during moments of stress and vulnerability. Fortune's analysis of Gallup data reveals that fully remote workers report the highest levels of emotional distress compared to hybrid and on-site workers. These aren't just professional dissatisfaction metrics, they're indicators of genuine human suffering caused by the absence of authentic social connection. The flexibility and convenience of remote work come with psychological costs that many organizations are only beginning to understand and address. The loss of embodied presence eliminates access to the nonverbal communication that comprises the majority of human interaction. Tone of voice, facial expressions, and body language provide context that helps people understand not just what their colleagues are saying, but what they mean and how they feel about it. Video calls capture some of this information, but miss the subtle cues that create empathy, trust, and emotional connection. The result is communication that feels efficient, but lacks the depth that creates lasting professional relationships. Creating meaningful connection in hybrid environments requires intentional strategies that most people haven't developed. You can't rely on spontaneous interactions to build relationships. You have to schedule them. You can't assume that working together will naturally create friendship. You have to actively cultivate personal connection. This intentionality feels artificial at first because it goes against the organic way relationships typically develop, but it becomes necessary for maintaining human connection in distributed work environments. Remote work forces us to be more intentional about authentic connection, which might actually make relationships deeper when people commit to doing the extra work required to know each other as complete human beings rather than just professional collaborators. But this same challenge of authentic connection in digital spaces extends far beyond the workplace, affecting how we approach our most intimate relationships and the search for romantic partnership in an increasingly mediated world. Dating app fatigue and the commodification of love. Dating apps promise connection but deliver commodification. Bumble has lost 90% of its value since going public in 2021. Match Group's stock has fallen 68% over the last 5 years. These aren't just business metrics, they're indicators of a fundamental breakdown in how we approach human connection. The platforms designed to solve loneliness have created new forms of romantic despair that previous generations never experienced. Swiping has turned potential partners into consumer choices. You browse through people like you're shopping for furniture on Amazon. Left swipe, not attractive enough. Right swipe, might be interesting. The complex human being behind each photo gets reduced to a split-second aesthetic judgment based on carefully curated images. You make decisions about someone's romantic potential faster than you decide what to have for lunch. The person who might become your life partner gets the same consideration you give to choosing between breakfast cereals. Peterson emphasized the importance of truth in relationships as the foundation for genuine connection. But dating apps operate on the opposite principle. They reward strategic deception. Your profile isn't a truthful representation of who you are. It's a marketing campaign designed to generate matches. You choose photos from your best days, write descriptions that emphasize your most attractive qualities, and present a version of yourself that's optimized for mass appeal rather than authentic connection. Everyone is selling a product, and the product is a fictional version of themselves. The dark humor of our situation becomes apparent when you step back and examine it objectively. You have access to more potential romantic partners than any generation in human history, yet young adults report feeling more romantically hopeless than ever. A 2022 survey from the Kinsey Institute found that 1 in 4 Gen Z adults had yet to have partnered sex. You can swipe through hundreds of profiles in an hour, match with dozens of people, and still go to bed alone wondering if you'll ever find someone who actually understands you. Dating apps have gamified love with algorithms designed to keep you playing, not winning. The business model depends on user engagement, not successful relationships. If everyone found their perfect match immediately, the apps would lose customers. So they create artificial scarcity, show you just enough potential matches to maintain hope, and use variable reward schedules that trigger the same psychological responses as slot machines. You get addicted to the possibility of connection rather than actually connecting with anyone. The paradox cuts deep. Infinite choice creates paralysis rather than satisfaction. When you can potentially match with anyone, no one feels special enough to pursue seriously. There's always another profile to swipe through, another person who might be more attractive, more successful, more compatible. The abundance of options makes commitment feel foolish rather than meaningful. Why settle for someone good when someone perfect might be just one swipe away? Authenticity becomes a liability in marketplace environments. The qualities that make someone a good long-term partner, kindness, reliability, emotional intelligence, shared values, don't translate well to profile photos and brief descriptions. The person who would support you through difficult times might not have the kind of dramatic lifestyle that generates swipe-worthy content. The partner who would build a meaningful life with you might seem boring compared to profiles full of travel photos and adventure sports. Gen Z is rejecting dating apps at unprecedented rates. A 2025 survey from the Kinsey Institute revealed that only 21.2% of Gen Z participants identified dating apps as their primary method of connecting, with 58% preferring in-person meetings. 79% of Gen Z are tired of dating apps according to Forbes Health. This isn't just preference, it's rebellion against a system that commodifies human connection and reduces romance to a series of consumer transactions. The shift toward wanting in-person connections reflects a deeper understanding that authentic relationships require presence, vulnerability, and time to develop naturally. When you meet someone at a coffee shop, through friends, or in a shared activity, you see them in context. You observe how they treat service workers, how they react to unexpected situations, how they interact with other people. These observations provide information about character that no dating profile can convey. Dating app burnout is actually a sign of healthy relationship instincts, rebelling against an artificial system. Your exhaustion from endless swiping isn't laziness, it's your psyche recognizing that this approach contradicts everything we know about how genuine attraction and lasting connection actually develop. The fatigue you feel after spending hours on dating apps isn't random, it's your authentic self rejecting a process that treats love like a commodity to be optimized and consumed. Recent AI features added to dating apps demonstrate how disconnected the industry has become from what users actually want. Bloomberg Intelligence reported that Gen Z dating app users found new AI features either uncomfortable or unnecessary. The solution to dating app fatigue isn't better algorithms or more sophisticated matching systems. It's returning to more organic ways of meeting people who share your interests, values, and life circumstances. The failure of dating apps points to our deep need for unmediated human connection. The most successful relationships still begin through friends, shared activities, work environments, and chance encounters, where people get to know each other as complete human beings rather than curated profiles. The apps promise to make finding love more efficient, but efficiency turns out to be the enemy of the slow, messy, unpredictable process through which real intimacy develops between two people who choose to be vulnerable with each other. This same tension between authentic expression and performative presentation extends far beyond romantic relationships. The fear of being judged, rejected, or misunderstood that drives dating app behavior has infected how we communicate about everything that matters to us. We've learned to curate not just our romantic selves, but our political opinions, our personal struggles, and our genuine thoughts about the world around us. The truth-telling challenge in cancel culture. The platforms created for authentic human connection have become stages for performing sanitized versions of ourselves, and this performance anxiety now extends into every area of public discourse. 67% of people self-censor their opinions online in 2025, creating a culture where performative agreement has replaced authentic discourse. You scroll through social media and notice something unsettling. Everyone seems to agree about everything. The comment sections are filled with supportive messages, validating responses, and carefully worded statements that offend no one while saying nothing meaningful. This isn't because humanity has suddenly reached consensus on complex issues. It's because expressing genuine opinions has become a high-risk activity that most people choose to avoid. Fear of social media backlash has made truth-telling feel dangerous in ways that previous generations couldn't imagine. One poorly worded tweet can end careers, destroy reputations, and turn strangers into enemies overnight. The speed and reach of digital platforms mean that your words can be screenshot, shared, and interpreted by thousands of people who have no context for your character, intentions, or life circumstances. A joke taken out of context becomes evidence of moral failing. A nuanced opinion gets reduced to a soundbite that confirms whatever narrative people want to impose on you. Peterson built his career on speaking what he believed to be true, not what people wanted to hear or what would make them comfortable. His core message was that authentic communication requires courage, because truth often challenges comfortable assumptions and forces people to confront difficult realities. But he was speaking in an environment where controversial ideas could be debated in lecture halls, academic journals, and traditional media formats that allowed for context and nuance. Today's social media landscape operates on different rules, where complexity gets flattened into binary positions and charitable interpretation becomes increasingly rare. The psychological cost of constantly monitoring your thoughts for potential offense creates a new form of mental exhaustion. You develop an internal editor that reviews everything you're about to say or write, scanning for words that might trigger negative reactions. This constant self-monitoring splits your attention between authentic expression and risk assessment. You spend cognitive energy calculating the social consequences of your opinions rather than exploring what you actually think about important issues. The mental bandwidth dedicated to avoiding offense reduces the bandwidth available for original thinking. Cancel culture has created a specific form of social anxiety around authentic expression that affects how people interact both online and in real life. You second-guess your natural responses to situations because you've been trained to consider how your reactions might be perceived, judged, and potentially weaponized against you. Conversations become performances where you're acting out a version of yourself that seems safe rather than expressing what you genuinely believe. This anxiety extends beyond social media into workplace interactions, social gatherings, and even intimate relationships, where you worry about saying something that could be misinterpreted or used against you later. The humor in our situation borders on the absurd. We have platforms explicitly designed for sharing thoughts, yet most people are afraid to share their actual thoughts. Twitter asks what's happening, but you respond with carefully sanitized observations that reveal nothing about what you really think is happening. Facebook prompts you to share what's on your mind, but what's actually on your mind would generate controversy, so you post generic positivity or say nothing at all. This environment has pushed many people toward either complete conformity or rebellious extremism as they react to the social policing mechanisms of digital platforms. Some choose total conformity, agreeing with whatever seems popular and avoiding any statement that might generate conflict. They become human echo chambers, reflecting back the approved opinions without adding personal insight or perspective. Others swing toward deliberate provocation, saying controversial things specifically because they're controversial, using shock value as a substitute for authentic communication. Both responses represent forms of performance rather than genuine expression. Can you be your authentic self in a world that punishes authenticity? This question haunts people who recognize that their public persona has diverged significantly from their private thoughts and feelings. The gap between what you think and what you feel safe saying creates internal tension that affects your sense of identity and self-respect. You start to wonder if you even know what you really believe anymore, since you've spent so much time avoiding authentic expression that your own opinions feel foreign and potentially dangerous. Strategies for truth-telling that maintain both integrity and social connection require careful consideration of context, audience, and communication style. You can express authentic opinions while remaining open to dialogue rather than defensiveness. This involves stating your views as personal perspectives rather than universal truths, acknowledging complexity rather than claiming certainty, and demonstrating genuine interest in understanding opposing viewpoints rather than just defeating them. The goal becomes honest communication rather than winning arguments or proving points. Building relationships with people who can handle authentic conversation becomes essential for psychological health in this environment. You need spaces where you can express genuine thoughts without fear of social or professional consequences. These relationships provide reality checks for your ideas and opportunities to practice authentic communication in safe settings. Without these connections, the pressure to self-censor can lead to isolation and resentment that affects all aspects of your social functioning. The fear of cancellation often prevents us from saying things that most people actually agree with but feel unable to express publicly. Polling data consistently shows that private opinions are more moderate and nuanced than what appears on social media platforms. Many people hold views that would be considered reasonable in face-to-face conversations, but seem controversial in digital contexts where they can be taken out of context and weaponized. The insight that transforms this challenge is recognizing that speaking truthfully doesn't require being provocative or insensitive. It requires courage to express your genuine perspective while remaining open to learning from others who disagree with you. Truth-telling becomes an act of service rather than self-assertion when it's done with respect for the complexity of human experience and genuine concern for understanding rather than just being understood. Yet even as we navigate these challenges of authentic expression, a deeper paradox emerges about the world we've created for ourselves. The meaning crisis in an abundant world. World Bank data shows global poverty has declined dramatically over recent decades, yet depression and anxiety rates continue climbing in prosperous nations. Material abundance that previous generations could never imagine surrounds us daily. You can order food from anywhere in the world with a few taps on your phone. You have access to entertainment, education, and information that would have been unthinkable luxuries just 50 years ago. Medical advances have eliminated diseases that terrorized our ancestors. Technology has solved problems that seemed impossible and created opportunities that expand constantly. Yet young adults report feeling more hopeless, directionless, and emotionally unstable than any generation before them. This paradox reveals something profound about human psychology that prosperity cannot solve. When your basic needs for food, shelter, safety, and survival are guaranteed, the traditional sources of meaning that guided human behavior for millennia simply disappear. Previous generations found purpose through fighting for survival, building communities out of necessity, and fulfilling clearly defined social roles that connected them to something larger than themselves. Your great-grandparents didn't wonder what they should do with their lives. They worked to eat, raised children to continue their family line, and contributed to communities that depended on their specific skills and presence. Peterson taught that meaning comes through voluntarily taking on responsibility for things that matter. But what happens when nothing seems to matter, because everything you could possibly need has already been provided? The challenges that once gave life meaning, securing food, finding shelter, protecting your family from real danger, have been solved by systems so efficient that most people never think about them. The grocery stores are always stocked. The electricity always works. The government provides safety nets that catch you if you fall. The abundance eliminates the struggle that historically created purpose. Infinite choice has paralyzed rather than liberated many people facing this abundance. When your career options are unlimited, choosing becomes overwhelming rather than exciting. When you can live anywhere, move anywhere, and connect with anyone, deciding where to plant roots feels arbitrary rather than meaningful. When every lifestyle, belief system, and value structure is available for adoption, selecting which one represents your authentic self becomes paralyzing rather than freeing. The freedom to be anything you want transforms into anxiety about whether you're choosing correctly. Quarter-life crises have become the norm as young people struggle to find direction in environments where direction feels optional rather than necessary. Previous generations followed predictable paths: finish school, get married, start a career, buy a house, raise children, retire. These milestones provided structure and meaning even when they felt restrictive. Today's young adults face endless options with no clear roadmap for making decisions that will create fulfillment rather than regret. They graduate from college and discover that their degree has prepared them for everything and nothing. They enter job markets where careers can change completely every few years. They navigate relationships where traditional roles and expectations have dissolved without being replaced by clear alternatives. The humor in being overwhelmed by too many good options becomes apparent when you consider how previous generations would have reacted to our complaints. Imagine explaining to someone from 1950 that you're depressed because you have too many career choices, too many places you could live, and too many potential romantic partners available through dating apps. They would struggle to understand how abundance could create suffering rather than joy. Yet research consistently shows that having too many choices reduces satisfaction with whatever choice you eventually make, because you're always aware of the alternatives you didn't choose. Social media amplifies this meaning crisis by creating a highlight reel of everyone else's success that makes ordinary life feel inadequate by comparison. You scroll through posts from high school classmates who seem to be traveling constantly, college friends who appear to have found their dream careers, and strangers who present themselves as living extraordinary lives filled with adventure and accomplishment. The constant exposure to other people's peak moments makes your normal Tuesday feel like evidence of failure rather than ordinary human experience. As research shows, social media use is linked to increased risks of depression, anxiety, loneliness, and low self-esteem, particularly because people use their profiles to project a perfect image with carefully chosen and edited photos and videos, which can lead others to feel their own life is lacking. Your feed becomes a constant reminder of possibilities you're not pursuing, experiences you're not having, and achievements you're not accomplishing. The woman posting from Bali makes your office job feel meaningless. The entrepreneur sharing their success story makes your steady income feel insufficient. The fitness influencer's transformation photos make your body feel inadequate. The travel blogger's adventures make your weekend plans feel boring. These comparisons happen automatically, constantly, and without context about the reality behind the curated presentations. The question that haunts this generation becomes, if you can be anything, how do you choose what to be? When every option remains open, no option feels compelling enough to justify closing off alternatives. The fear of making the wrong choice keeps many people from making any meaningful choices at all. They remain in holding patterns, waiting for clarity that never comes, pursuing multiple paths simultaneously without committing fully to any of them. The abundance of possibility becomes a prison of indecision. Peterson recognized that meaning emerges from voluntary constraint and chosen responsibility. When everything is possible, nothing feels necessary. But when you voluntarily limit your options and commit to specific responsibilities, you create the conditions where meaning can develop naturally. The parent who chooses to prioritize their children's well-being over personal ambition finds purpose in that sacrifice. The entrepreneur who commits to solving a specific problem discovers meaning in the struggle to create something valuable. The artist who dedicates themselves to mastering their craft finds satisfaction in the discipline required for improvement. The insight that transforms this crisis is recognizing that the abundance of choice represents an opportunity to consciously choose your values rather than simply inherit them from your circumstances, culture, or family. Previous generations often found meaning through obligations imposed by necessity. Your meaning can come from responsibilities you voluntarily accept because you've decided they matter to you personally. The meaning crisis is actually an invitation to become more intentional about what you care about and why you care about it, rather than drifting through life responding to external pressures and social expectations. But recognizing this opportunity requires something that has become increasingly difficult in our hyperconnected world: the ability to sit quietly with yourself long enough to figure out what you actually want underneath all the noise and distraction. Building self-awareness in the age of distraction. Peterson's exercise becomes the foundation for developing genuine self-awareness, but it requires adaptation for our hyperconnected reality. Put your phone in another room, sit on your bed, and ask yourself what you're doing wrong that you know you're doing wrong that you could fix. The physical separation from your device isn't optional anymore, it's essential. Your phone has become such an integrated part of your thinking process that having it nearby makes genuine self-reflection nearly impossible. Even when it's silent, even when it's face down, your brain maintains partial awareness of its presence and the potential for interruption. This simple practice has become exponentially harder because silence feels foreign rather than natural. Your nervous system has adapted to constant stimulation. The absence of input creates anxiety instead of clarity. When you remove external distractions, your mind doesn't naturally turn inward. It searches desperately for something to fill the void. You become aware of sounds you normally ignore, physical sensations you typically overlook, and thoughts that usually get interrupted before they fully form. The discomfort isn't random, it's your psyche adjusting to conditions that used to be normal human experience. Most people discover profound resistance to being alone with their thoughts without digital mediation. You sit down intending to reflect and immediately feel an urgent need to check something, research something, or consume some form of content. The impulse to reach for your phone happens automatically, below the level of conscious decision-making. You catch yourself reaching for a device that isn't there, then feel genuinely confused about what to do with your hands, your attention, your mental energy. This resistance reveals how thoroughly external stimulation has replaced internal reflection as your default mental state. The questions Peterson suggested become much more complex when applied to digital age life patterns. What are you doing wrong? Well, you're probably spending too much time scrolling through social media instead of engaging with real relationships. You're likely consuming endless content about self-improvement instead of actually working on yourself. You're probably seeking validation from strangers online instead of building genuine self-respect through difficult choices and authentic actions. You're possibly avoiding uncomfortable emotions by immediately distracting yourself with entertainment whenever difficult feelings arise. Creating self-awareness practices that work with modern constraints requires acknowledging that complete disconnection isn't realistic for most people. Instead, you need structured periods of intentional reflection that account for your actual living situation. This might mean 10 minutes in the morning before checking any devices. It could involve walking without podcasts, music, or phone calls. It might require designated times when you sit quietly and ask yourself specific questions about your behavior, choices, and motivations without immediately seeking external input or validation for your answers. Meditation apps and self-help content can become sophisticated forms of avoidance rather than genuine tools for growth. You download an app that promises to teach you mindfulness, then spend your reflection time following guided instructions instead of developing your own capacity for self-examination. You consume podcasts about personal development while avoiding the actual work of examining your own patterns and making difficult changes. You read books about authenticity while continuing to live inauthentically. The consumption of content about growth becomes a substitute for the uncomfortable process of actually growing. The difference between consuming content about self-improvement and doing the actual work becomes critical when you're serious about development. Reading about Peterson's insights feels productive, but it doesn't create the same psychological impact as sitting alone with your thoughts and confronting uncomfortable truths about your behavior. Watching videos about self-awareness doesn't develop self-awareness, it develops familiarity with concepts about self-awareness. The real work happens when you turn off all input and force yourself to examine your actual life choices, relationship patterns, and daily behaviors without external guidance or distraction. Consider the gap between who you are online and who you are in private moments when no one is watching. This discrepancy has become the primary source of internal conflict for most people in 2025. Your social media presence represents an idealized version of your life that requires constant maintenance and curation. Your private reality includes doubt, confusion, procrastination, petty thoughts, and ordinary human struggles that never appear in your digital presentation. The energy you spend maintaining this gap drains resources that could be used for actual development and authentic relationship building. Honest self-assessment requires examining how technology affects your behavior, relationships, and emotional patterns. How do you act differently when you know you're being observed versus when you're truly alone? What thoughts do you have that you would never post publicly? What actions do you take in private that contradict the persona you present online? How much of your daily mental energy goes toward managing impressions rather than pursuing meaningful goals? These questions reveal the specific ways that digital connectivity interferes with authentic self-development. Your phone usage patterns provide concrete data about your priorities and impulses that words can't obscure. Check your screen time statistics honestly. Notice which apps consume the most attention. Observe how often you reach for your device when facing uncomfortable emotions or challenging tasks. Pay attention to how you feel before and after social media sessions. This behavioral data reveals truths about your actual priorities that your stated intentions might contradict. The numbers don't lie about where you're directing your time and attention. Structured self-questioning requires specific techniques that account for how digital distraction has affected your capacity for sustained reflection. Start with simple questions that have concrete answers rather than abstract philosophical inquiries. What did you do yesterday that moved you closer to your stated goals? What did you avoid doing that you know would benefit you? What conversations did you have that felt authentic versus performative? What choices did you make based on how they would look to others rather than what you actually wanted? But there's one exercise that cuts through all the complexity and reveals exactly where you're deceiving yourself about who you've become. It takes 5 minutes and requires nothing but brutal honesty about the gap between your public presentation and your private reality. The 5-minute exercise that reveals your true self. The exercise itself is straightforward, but reveals profound truths about the gap between who you present yourself to be and who you actually are. Go to your social media profiles right now and look at your last 20 posts. Screenshot them if you need to. Then sit quietly and try to remember what you were actually thinking and feeling during the time periods when you posted each of those updates. Not what you wanted people to think you were feeling, what you were genuinely experiencing in your private moments during those same days or weeks. This comparison will reveal the exact gap between your authentic self and your performed self because it uses concrete evidence instead of abstract self-reflection. Your posts represent how you want to be perceived by the world. Your private thoughts during those same periods represent who you actually were when no one was watching. The difference between these two realities shows you precisely how much energy you're spending on maintaining a false image versus living authentically. Most people discover something disturbing when they do this exercise honestly. The person in their social media posts seems to have their life together. They're traveling, achieving goals, having meaningful experiences, and maintaining positive relationships. But the person they actually were during those same time periods was struggling with anxiety, avoiding important decisions, procrastinating on meaningful work, or feeling disconnected from the people around them. The gap isn't small, it's enormous. Start with something recent and work backwards. That photo you posted from the weekend that got 50 likes and several comments about how great your life looks. What were you actually feeling when you took that photo? Were you genuinely happy and present in that moment? Or were you thinking about how the image would look on social media? Were you enjoying the experience itself? Or were you focused on capturing content that would generate positive responses from your followers? Look at the captions you wrote for those posts. The motivational quotes, the gratitude statements, the updates about your progress toward various goals. Compare those words with what you were actually thinking about during those days. Were you genuinely grateful, or were you trying to convince yourself and others that you should be grateful? Were you actually motivated, or were you posting motivation content because you felt unmotivated and hoped the performance might inspire real feelings? The emotional experience of recognizing your own self-deception feels uncomfortable because it challenges your fundamental sense of self-honesty. You probably consider yourself a relatively honest person. You don't lie to friends about important things. You don't deliberately deceive people in your professional relationships. But this exercise reveals a more subtle form of dishonesty that you've been practicing without fully acknowledging it. You've been lying to yourself about who you are by creating and maintaining a public persona that diverges significantly from your private experience. Consider what the gap reveals about your deepest fears and insecurities. The areas where your online presentation differs most dramatically from your private reality are usually the areas where you feel most vulnerable or inadequate. If your posts consistently show social activities and gatherings, but you are actually feeling lonely during those periods, your fear might be that people will discover you don't have as many close relationships as you want them to believe. If your posts emphasize productivity and achievement, but you were struggling with procrastination and self-doubt, your insecurity might be about your actual competence or work ethic. The professional success you post about might mask anxiety about whether you're actually good at your job. The relationship content you share might hide concerns about whether your partner truly understands you. The fitness posts might cover shame about your body or health habits. The travel photos might compensate for feelings of boredom or stagnation in your daily life. Each area of exaggeration points to something you're afraid people will judge you for if they see the unfiltered reality. Peterson understood that confronting uncomfortable truths about yourself is the starting point for genuine growth rather than the obstacle to it. He recognized that people avoid self-examination because it reveals inadequacies, failures, and character flaws that feel embarrassing or overwhelming. But he also knew that avoiding these truths prevents any possibility of meaningful change. You can't fix problems you won't acknowledge. You can't grow beyond limitations you won't examine. You can't become more authentic while maintaining elaborate deceptions about who you currently are. Most people discover they've been unconsciously trying to convince themselves that the performed version is the real version. You post about gratitude hoping it will make you feel more grateful. You share fitness content hoping it will motivate you to exercise more consistently. You write about personal growth hoping it will inspire actual development. The performance becomes a form of wishful thinking, where you hope that acting like the person you want to be will somehow transform you into that person without doing the actual work. This pattern reveals something profound about human psychology that social media has amplified. People naturally engage in some level of impression management in all social situations, but digital platforms have made this process so constant and sophisticated that many people have lost touch with their authentic thoughts, feelings, and experiences. The performed self starts feeling more real than the private self because it gets more attention, validation, and positive feedback. Once you see the gap clearly, you can't unsee it, and that awareness naturally pulls you toward authenticity. The recognition of your own performance becomes impossible to ignore. Every time you start to craft a post, edit a photo, or write a caption, you become conscious of the choices you're making about how to present yourself versus who you actually are. This consciousness creates pressure to close the gap through more honest self-expression rather than more sophisticated performance. The transformative insight is that authenticity becomes easier once you stop pretending you're already authentic. This recognition opens the door to a different way of engaging with technology and with yourself. The work begins with conscious choices about how you engage with the tools that shape modern life. Becoming your truest self in 2025 isn't about rejecting technology completely, it's about using it consciously while maintaining connection to your analog humanity. You can engage with social media, dating apps, and AI tools without letting them define who you are. The key is awareness of when you're performing versus when you're being authentic. Here's your challenge. Spend the next week practicing one moment of complete honesty each day, starting with yourself. Say what you actually think instead of what sounds good. Post something real instead of something optimized. Have one conversation where you're genuinely present instead of thinking about your response. The adventure of your life is still available, but it requires turning off the notifications long enough to hear your own voice.